Welcome to all our dear listeners of TALRadio. This is Himabindu, your host. Today we have an eminent guest, Kyra, who is CEO of 15B, a company she founded in 2018 following the successful sale of her previous venture. Kyra dedicates herself to crafting enriching learning journeys for both corporate clients and individuals, leveraging on-site workshops, team retreats, and the innovative Well Team Leadership Certification course. She imparts invaluable wisdom to leaders and teams, emphasizing the pivotal role of well-being in driving peak performance. Beyond her professional role, Kyra is a certified meditation and Qigong instructor. Hi, Kyra. Welcome to the Tal Radio Show. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you so much. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm so happy to be with you.
Thank you so much. So let's start our questionnaire. The first question is, what was the inspiration for you to start the 15B organization?
Well, thank you so much for asking. My inspiration was that my first business was focused on helping individuals and leaders learn how to work remotely, virtually. And this was quite a long time ago, before all of the technology and the pandemic promoted working in virtual teams, remote teams, and in flexible arrangements. And as I did my work with individuals, leaders, teams, and organizations in those days, I identified a very important trend, which was that people, just because they show up and perform well at work, doesn't mean necessarily that they're feeling happy, that they're feeling fulfilled, that their lives have meaning, and that they can connect to their purpose. And so I sold my business so that I could dedicate myself to helping people be well.
That's great. So your name of the organization 15B sounds interesting. And I read in the website like phosphorus, the element, specifies to the 15 chemical element. So what was the idea behind it to name 15B?
So I was burning out in my career. I was letting the stress of running a business and being a manager of people, which is an awesome responsibility, and all of the pressures of financial pressures and serving our clients with excellence, all of that was weighing very heavy on me. And by the time I sold my business, and I had had a corporate career before that, I realized that I felt very lost. I was very stressed. My marriage was experiencing difficulty. I was not being the loving mother and parent that I wanted to be to my 3 sons. And so I went on a journey. I took about a year. I was lucky enough to be able to take a lot of time and go to retreats, sit in the desert, go to the mountains, and really try to learn more about well-being, about how to recover from burnout, and how to live a life that was more aligned with myself. And during that time, I envisioned a new business, 15B. And what our mission is to help every person's light shine bright. And in order to do that, it means we have to recognize that we are valuable beyond the work that we do for our families, for our work, for our communities. Each one of us is a very, very special person, and we do have that phosphorus mineral in us. And phosphorus, as you know, is a light that shines. And so when we recognize that each one of us has a very, very special, unique set of gifts and value, no matter what we do, we can learn to start to just be, to spend time with ourselves, to get to know ourselves, so that we can bring our gifts ultimately into our families and our communities and our workplaces.
That was great thought. Like from your experiences, you came up with the 15B to help those people who are facing same like you problems as or some other problems. So as you said, you felt burnout. So, what are the signs and symptoms of burnout? Because every individual will have a different signs and symptoms. So, we doesn't know that really comes under burnout or something else. Could you specify on what exactly burnout and what are the symptoms of it?
Yes, thank you. It's such an important topic. So oftentimes we may use the term burnout. Oh, I'm feeling so burned out. I'm feeling so exhausted. I feel overworked. There are so many ways to describe the stress that occurs in our lives, both in our work lives and often in our personal lives. And so the World Health Organization identified a very specific definition of what burnout actually is. And the reason the WHO identified this was because they see this as a global concern. Even before the pandemic, even before COVID, there was an identification by psychologists all around the world that people are struggling with their mental health for many reasons. And so the WHO wanted to bring awareness to us all of the three primary signs that we may be experiencing burnout. The first one is emotional exhaustion. And it sounds like I just can't do it anymore. I can't take care of the things, the problems, the challenges that come to me. I can't take care of them in the way that I used to. So it's recognizing you maybe just don't have any more feelings to feel. You don't have any more energy for yet another reaction. And this emotional exhaustion continues even if you take a vacation, even if you take a day off, even if you spend time with people you love. So that's the first symptom, emotional exhaustion. The second one is something called depersonalization. That's a very big word. And it basically means that you stop seeing the other people in your life as people with feelings, people with desires, with dreams. And we start to distance or detach ourselves from those people. So if they have needs, we stop being able to see the value of their need, the value of the request, the dignity of that individual. And we may also start to question their intentions. So that's the second symptom, depersonalization. The third actually is personal ineffectiveness. So we stop being able to get the same result with the same amount of work. So for example, maybe paying your bills seemed effortless. And then over time, it becomes very difficult. You might have emotions about it. You may have a very strong reaction to the need to do that, or you may just not be able to do it at all. So that would be the third one. And the challenge with burnout is that it can creep up on us. So these things can start happening very slowly and continue to get worse without us even being able to recognize that this is happening. And so it can be very valuable when you start to feel a little bit different or start to notice something different, to be able to have people in your life to reflect back to you, to be able to say, I notice this change in your reaction, in what you're saying, in how fast you say it, in the tone of voice, in how long it takes you, etc.
Got it. So all these symptoms are very specific to the individuals, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you have to have all of them. You might just really express one of those. it may just become very difficult for you to do your work. You love the people around you, you still value what they're doing and what they're asking for, but you just can't do it anymore. That would be a sign. And there's no official diagnosis. It's not like if you go to a doctor can diagnose you with burnout. It's more a set of circumstances that can have an indication to you, to your loved ones, to the people that you work with, that something has shifted for you.
So that's why you brought an initiative called a Well-Team Assessment Plan. So could you please elaborate on it?
Yes, so we developed something we call the Well-Team Assessment. And this is a 10 to 15 minute survey that you can take that helps you identify how you're feeling at work. So across a number of aspects of our work life, how are you feeling? So let me take a step back. When we think about well-being, there's emotional well-being, there's physical well-being, there's mental, spiritual, or purpose, there's energy, there's social, there's financial. There's so many different aspects of well-being. How well are you sleeping? How well are you eating? Are you lonely? Are you feeling loved and supported? Those are all aspects of well-being. And then when we go into the workplace, there are many, many more aspects of well-being. And so what our assessment does is it helps you and your manager or your leader or the leader of the organization or the firm to identify how people feel about their well-being at work. Do they feel safe at work? Do they have the resources they need to be able to do a good job? Do they feel like people care about them and they feel a bond or a connection to their coworkers? The other aspect of what we measure is something called team well-being. And this is about how the team is supporting each other. So it isn't so much my relationship with my work as it is how is everybody supporting and working together? What is that culture of our team? And so with the information, leaders and individuals can identify how they're feeling about their work and whether they're headed toward burning out. It also helps organizations identify the leaders of teams and how well they're tending to caring for the well-being of their employees. There is a big shift underway now globally that is about recognizing that organizations, employers, corporations have an opportunity to drive value, to create value for the humans in their organizations. And so this assessment helps organizations be able to identify how well they're doing that.
That's great. That sounds great. So, as you said, assessment plan in the workplace. So, how HR department is impactful in this well-being of the employees and to progress in the productivity?
Yes. So, oftentimes, many of us have grown up or been trained to think that people are part of the machine that makes a company grow. Just like an assembly line would create a car or a food item, so too people. So that's where this concept of human capital came from. This idea that employees are a cost to delivering a product that the company makes. And the big shift that HR has really been focused on for the last few years especially is to recognize that there is a global mental health crisis. And so it is no longer in the best interest of an organization, a manager, a president, a leader, to see human beings as human doings, as the necessary cost to getting a product out. Instead, the word sustainability, especially human sustainability, is where leading HR people are focused. And what that looks like is, how do we as a company invest in the human beings in our organization so that they feel well, so that they feel seen, they feel they belong, their differences are recognized, respected, and valued. And that is how we build performance. That's how our company grows. It's not in spite of our workers, it's because of our workers. And when then we make those investments in people as humans with lives, with loves, with desires, with the need to contribute to something greater than themselves, performance improves. So it's a shift. HR has this opportunity to help the leadership of the organization understand and recognize this relationship. It's no longer a nice thing to do. It's actually a necessary thing to do. And it's necessary so that we can convey respect to every human being on the planet. And it's necessary because when we do show that every human being matters and is valued, the organization grows, it excels, and it will sustain for decades to come.
Okay, that's great. That's wonderful. So, what do you think? What are the reasons for the people to feel stressed out or burnout in the office due to lack of appreciation, or they are not enjoying the work, or something else? Could you specify on this?
Yes. So, it has been recognized for quite a long time now that the mental health of human beings on Earth is declining overall. This was a trend even before the COVID pandemic, and it's really being recognized as a second global pandemic. And the World Health Organization identified that a few years ago as well. So why is this happening? There are so many potential reasons why this is happening. And there isn't any conclusive evidence as to why. There are lots of hypotheses. But what we know is that loneliness is contributing. Technology in various ways is contributing. And there is a lot of change underway in our world. And so it can create an environment where human beings feel like they have less control, less hope, less anticipation that the outcomes of all of this transition will be positive for society, for humanity, for their families, for their communities, and for themselves. And so in a world with so much uncertainty, and you could argue whether the world is more uncertain than it was 100 years ago or 50 years ago, but all of that kind of doesn't matter because we're living in it right now. So when we go to work in the morning, we're bringing all of that with us. We're bringing all of the challenges of our family and the people we love, the people in our community, the friends that we care about. And we know even if we're happy, even if we're feeling fulfilled, the statistics show that most of us know somebody who isn't doing well. So we bring that. We bring financial concerns. We bring family pressures. We bring so many things into the workplace. And we can't, as human beings, just shut all that off and be a robot. We're not robots, we're humans. And so what happens is that how we feel impacts our work. So if I'm not feeling well, if I'm coming to work and I'm worried or I'm fearful, then how am I going to connect in with the value of my work? It's going to be harder for me to connect into my bigger purpose or my bigger mission or the ways that I contribute? And what if I work for somebody who also isn't feeling well? Perhaps they'll be less likely to thank me. Maybe they'll have a tone of voice when they ask me to take care of something. And when that interaction occurs, I may start to internalize, I may go inward and start to try to make sense of a bunch of information for which there is no context. And then there's so much work to do, and there's so much stress on corporate budgets. So then sometimes I'm doing the job of two people. Well, then there's so much stress. How am I going to get everything done? And on and on and on. And so the important thing to remember is it is not your fault. It is not your fault. Every one of us, I honestly believe, is doing the very best they can. And what happens is when we feel very stressed and very burnt out, we can lose sight. Remember, I was saying depersonalization. We can lose sight of other people and their needs. We can forget other people's humanity. And then all of that just contributes and contributes and contributes to make the workplace more and more difficult.
Yeah, that sounds sense. Like we should not carry the negativity with us, and we should be in the place where it's surrounded by positivity. Then only we can perform better.
Yeah. And then there's this term, toxic positivity. Yeah.
True.
So we can hear that message, I should be positive, but what if you just can't? What if it feels insincere to be positive? What if you really are struggling with some very difficult things? So what I encourage everyone to do is to remember that no matter your difficulties, you are valuable and you are special and you are so important that when we go there, when we can be kind to ourselves, when we can give ourselves a bit of compassion, that's when we can turn around and see the positive. I may not be able to control these circumstances, but I can control how negative I am in my talk, in my mindset, in my words to myself. I can control that. And I may make a mistake. I may say mean things to myself. I can recognize that. I can become aware. And then I have a choice. So I want to make sure that I clarify. I'm not suggesting we just take a negative thought and switch it around and make it positive. We may be able to do that with some training and with some practice. But at first, I think the first step is really to just observe. Observe your emotions. How are you feeling in this moment? Observe your thoughts. What is your brain telling you? And then remember, thoughts and feelings are just energy. They're just traveling through on their way somewhere else. They're not reality. They're a perception based on your experience. So we honor and recognize and observe. That's all that's going on. And then we come inward and we try to give ourselves a little bit of patience or a little bit of compassion or kindness.
That's great. Like you mean to say that positive affirmations in the morning does impact our daily productivity.
It does. In fact, scientists have proven that it rewrites, it reprograms your brain. So your brain creates new neural pathways just by saying those affirmations to yourself every day. Just like looking for something to be grateful for, to be thankful for, also rewires your brain. So yes, exactly.
Like the gratitude also, we should have the gratitude towards the universe and towards the people who are making us happy daily, right?
Yes, yes. And I really practice looking for gratitude even in the difficulty, even in the challenge, even in the tone of voice of the person that is difficult to work with. I really work every day at finding gratitude for those moments sincere gratitude because it's teaching me something. And then I can look for what is the lesson here. Maybe it's that I need to learn to forgive someone, or I have an opportunity to see the world through someone else's eyes. And when I do that, then I can be a better person and I can be happier too.
Seriously. So that if you are positive, we can transfer our positive energy to others also, right?
Beautiful.
Then you have connected with many corporates and individuals. In your experience, you have treated or you have faced with many experiences, right? So
Yes.
especially for the women leaders, what are the barriers for them, like to restrain themselves to progress or to develop? Is the barriers inside their brain or it is surrounded outside in the environment? What do you say?
Wow, I love this question. It's all of the above. There's an expression, perception is reality. So I think where I'd start is to ask, if you're a woman leader, to ask yourself, what is my reality? What do I perceive my reality to be? What do I believe about myself and my abilities and the limitations in the world? And I think something like journaling or talking into a recording device of some sort, creating an art project, dancing it out, whatever form of expression feels right for you. I think the first step is really to get in touch with what is your brain telling you is your experience as a woman leader, and what is your heart telling you? What are those emotions that are coming up for you, even as you listen to us talking about this? And then what are the actual experiences you have encountered? And again, by observing these things, we can start to get to know ourselves better and we can start to understand our brain. So I'll give you an example. So let's say I'm giving a presentation in a meeting in my workplace. And I've worked very hard on this presentation, and people are interrupting me. They're not letting me finish my presentation. They're not even letting me fully answer the questions that they're asking of me before they jump in to give their own answer. I may leave that meeting and have a whole bunch of feelings. What are those feelings? That's what I mean. Identify, how do I feel right now? Do I feel angry? Do I feel betrayed? Do I feel frustrated? Do I feel sad? And then ask your brain, how do I perceive what happened? And many times we will attribute, this is how our brains work, we will attribute that situation to ourselves. I'm a woman, so that must be why they treated me that way. And maybe, in fact, that is true, but maybe it isn't true. So when we are willing to observe our brains, write down all of the things our brains are telling us about being a woman in the workplace, we can start to understand, do we have a bias? Are we being objective? Are we attributing things that are happening to us being a woman? And then once we identify what our brains and our hearts are telling us, how we're perceiving and analyzing the situation, now we can be scientists and we can go back out with hypotheses and we can gather data. You can ask somebody in that meeting, what is your perception of what happened? Because this is how I perceive it. And just like a scientist, we can gather data and information and start to understand where our perception is reality and that reality is reality. And when we may be telling ourselves a story or attributing things to something because of our personal experience, our thoughts, our beliefs, that may have an opportunity to be rethought or reframed in our hearts and minds. Because here's the thing, when we see our own limitation, we limit ourselves. We are infinite, and the possibilities in our lives are many. And when we see limitations and we see roadblocks and we see judgment and we see all these things, we will be limited in what we believe we can do. So it is work, inner work in ourselves, and also recognizing there are difficulties, structural difficulties in society, in our workplace, in our families. And it's not to be, those structural limitations are not to be reduced or diminished. So I guess the short answer is both.
Yeah, it's like, self-analysis, self-research, like where we are going wrong or we are doing correct, but we will have different perceptions in ourselves, like presumptions, like I might be wrong somewhere, I have done something wrong. But instead of going to to become the reality, before we need to do pre-analysis, like is it reality or is it my perception or presumption, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Kyra, for your valuable time and suggestions to our listeners.
You're welcome. It was such a pleasure to be with you.
So let's join in another episode with Kyra to discuss on much more interesting topics. Stay tuned to TALRadio for much interesting and informative content. This is Himabindu signing off for today. Let's meet in another episode.